Let's look at the macros, the biomolecules, the macronutrients. Let's look at those because these are going to be the players that are going to be involved next week when we talk about metabolism. Carbohydrates and metabolism, or carbohydrates and lipids, sorry. The major function, if I was to ask on an exam coming up, what is the primary function of carbohydrates? The primary function of carbohydrates is to provide energy for the body. It can do a few other things. I get it. But its major role is to provide energy for the cells, energy for the body. When we talk about cellular respiration, we're primarily going to be talking about, oxidative phosphorylation of carbs, right, of glucose. Anytime you see OSE on the end, okay, that tells you it's a sugar. Just like anytime you see ASE on the end, that's an enzyme, right? All right. So anytime you see that suffix of OSE on the end, you know you're talking about a sugar. All right. Carbohydrates. Carbohydrates can be very simple: glucose, fructose, your two most common carbs that you think of. Galactose is the third kind of simple sugar. And they can be very, very, very complex, like starches, okay, glycogen, all right, fiber. And that's where you get all the varied functionality of these things. Glucose, fructose right here, these are, and there's its structural formula. But glucose and fructose, if, I was a gambling man, I mean, these are the ones, especially glucose. That's the one we're going to be talking about during cellular respiration. So I'm going to assume that you're going to remember that glucose is a carbohydrate and glucose is a monosaccharide. It is a simple sugar. It is a one carbon ring individual. The RC blows. There's glucose, galactose, and fructose. They're all isomers. They all have the same number of carbon molecules and all that whatnot. They're just in a slightly different arrangement. And it's that slight different arrangement too that gives these guys their sweetness. Okay. Disaccharide, what's di mean? Well, I have it written up there, so I hope you know. Two. Saccharide means what?
Sugar.
Okay. So 2 sugars. Sucrose, maltose, lactose. Okay. Those would be disaccharides. Right? I'm not going to ask you to get into the chemistry of what these things are all made of and whatnot. Glucose is all of them. All right. But I'm not getting into every single. I'm not getting into that. That's nutrition class. Okay. That's nutrition class. Come there. You can hear me talk about all that fun stuff. Simple sugars, monosaccharides, disaccharides. Okay. The more complex carbohydrates become, the more kind of varied function they have. Whereas monos and disaccharides provide, quick energy. Polysaccharides go into structure for the most part. Poly means many. Many sugars. Okay. And generally, it's a number of glucose molecules strung together, and that's what they're trying to show you here to impress upon you. But some of these can have an open lattice network structure, like you see here in glycogen, which is our storage form of sugar in humans. Okay. I'm just going to underline some important stuff here for you. And when our sugar levels drop below 70, that's what we get it from. Okay. Secrete some hormones, break down glycogen. Can you see me?
Yeah, we can see you.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Nope, you muted yourself.
Okay. Okay. So I'm not really sure where I started or where I ended, but I'm just going to start using words again. Mm. All right, so I think I stopped with talking about glycogen being the storage form of sugar in us. Starch is the storage form of sugar in plants, and cellulose makes up a plant cell wall. Why is knowing the storage form of sugar of starch, storage form of plants, important? Can anybody think of a reason as to why that would be important?
Because they can get energy from that sugar too.
Right, because I hope you eat vegetables, right? You guys eat vegetables?
Depends on the day.
Hopefully you're eating 2 to 3 cups every day, young man. Cellulose, the same thing. Not digestible. We can't digest it. Why the hell do we need it? Why do we need it? Anybody? Feed all that gut bacteria, all those little bacteria that you have in your large intestine and your bowels. It helps to feed them. Okay, those oligosaccharides. Oligos are like anywhere between 6 to 8, 6 to 10, 8 to 10 in length. Polysaccharides. Poly is anything over 10. Anything from like 3 to 9 or 10 is considered, 3 to 9 is considered an oligosaccharide. And those things are what, those bacteria, they have the digestive capability to break those things down, those cellulose, okay, that roughage that you're consuming, that salad that you eat. It helps to feed those things, keeps them robust and populated in that large intestine. And then, it helps you, to be smarter, and it helps you to do a whole bunch of things, helps you be healthier. So eat 2 to 3 cups, please, of some vegetables every day for me. How do we break all these things down? I told you water was important, right? So here you go. We have different chemical reactions to help break these things down. Where are we going to see this? In the digestive tract. When we start talking about the breakdown of these things, of these macronutrients to make stuff. Fats, proteins, carbs, that's what we're talking about when we talk about dehydration and hydrolysis reactions. And again, look at the word. Excuse me. Hydrolysis. To break, to destroy. Okay. To break down. To BRK down. The BRKDWN. To break down. Hydro is water. Duh, right? So water is being utilized to break down stuff, breaking down big things into small things. Okay. Maltose. Add a little water, break it up. It becomes 2 glucose molecules. Okay. Right there. There's starch. Utilize water. Comes in here and breaks it up. Break it up. Hydrolysis reactions are catabolic. That's another name for them. Okay. If you know that name, there you go. Where we are destroying bigger things and making them into smaller. Okay, that's catabolic. Dehydration synthesis is where we break down those bonds in between these molecules, these covalent bonds. In dehydration synthesis, what's this word mean?
The form or to make.
Yeah. With dehydration synthesis, water is being produced. Okay, where's the water come from? Ah, right there. There she blows, and there's your water that's produced and leaves the system. Okay. This is also sometimes referred to as a condensation reaction in some books. It is an anabolic thing, right? It's an anabolic type of situation as well. We are building up stuff, building bigger things from smaller things. Okay. And that's all I'm just trying to talk about here. We'll be talking about dehydration reactions and dehydration synthesis reactions. And we'll be talking a lot about hydrolysis reactions when it comes to the digestive system later. Lipids do a number of fantastic things. They help insulate you. They help cushion you. They protect. They also provide energy. So they can do a number of fantastic things. We're going to look at it early on in terms of providing units of energy, though. So that's the function that I hope you will remember. Right? Right. Lipids have a number of various different orientations, very usually long chains of hydrocarbons. Here's what it looks like from a cis-trans type of view. And again, lipids have two major components to them, or there are two major forms of them, sorry. Those are those that are solid at room temperature and those that are liquid at room temperature. And really for us guys, I mean, we're going to be worried about only this soluble portion here, the triglycerides that make things. We'll be hinting at basically how these guys help us to make energy. Again, I'm more concerned with glucose predominantly next week when we talk about it with cellular respiration, providing energy for the body and the steps, glycolysis, transition, Krebs, electron transport, all that whatnot next week when we talk about that. We're going to be talking about it from a carbohydrate standpoint. But fats do it as well. They have a carboxyl end. Okay. And it can be saturated. What does saturated mean? It means every bond has a hydrogen. Unsaturated just tells you that it has some double bonds. Okay. Which one's better for you, saturated or unsaturated?
Unsaturated.
Unsaturated. There you go. See, 50-50 shot. Unsaturated are better for you. Less hydrogens, so less ability to make energy. Remember, fats provide 9 kilocalories per unit of energy. So, and fat goes a long way. Okay, fat goes a very long way. Carbohydrates provide 4 kilocalories per unit. So do proteins. So, that's why you don't have to consume as much fat as compared to a carb or a protein in the totality of if you count carbs, if you count calories, sorry. It's the type of calorie that you're consuming. So if you consume a lot of fat, you don't have to consume a lot of carbohydrates, although a lot of man-made food is predominantly all fat and carb related. So you can see where a lot of that goes, a little bit of that goes a very long way, and unfortunately goes around your midsection. Here's what triglycerides looks like. It is glycerol and the hydrocarbon chain. And if you look at this thing here, they're showing you shorthand right here. But the great thing about this thing, every couple carbons, I can have a chain reaction here, okay? So every couple carbons here, I can block them out. 9, 9, 9, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. What's 9 times 7? There you go. That's how many units of energy. These things are hundreds of hydrocarbons long. Okay. So it's not uncommon for a lot of very common saturated fats in the American diet to provide upwards of 100 units of energy. And that's in one serving. Well, okay. Do you eat more than one serving? Let's just say probably. So let's say you ate 7 servings. That's 700 calories that you just consumed. And your typical diet should be around 2,000. So hopefully you're going to fast the rest of the damn day. But we as Americans generally don't. Okay. Where all of those, where in the world do all those things go? Those carbon molecules that I just talked about being cut up? They become these mythical creatures called ketones. And if you do that ketogenic diet, you consume a higher percentage of fat compared to carbohydrates. And it's these ketone bodies that your cells will convert into usable energy. It takes a little bit of time, okay? If you're somebody who does ketogenic diet, one of the first kind of side effects, if you will, of it is, brain fog. Well, it takes time to get those ketones across the blood-brain barrier. Okay, the astrocytes are involved with that, help form that tight seal. So now glucose doesn't easily get across. Now astrocytes got to do a little bit of heavy lifting there and allow those ketone bodies to come across. So the brain cells can use them to make energy. Tired, lethargic, because it takes a little bit of effort, a little bit of time for the cells to create enough energy stores to fund the body's functionality on ketone bodies. If for whatever reason you don't, have enough carbohydrates though, ketones can accumulate a hell of a lot. And if you've ever smelled somebody who is a diabetic, if you've ever smelled their breath, it has that kind of new mown hay type of smell, right? It's sugary. Those are the ketones. Okay, it's that acetone that's given off. Okay. There's 3 of them. A couple of them are, one of them is exhaled, one of them is urinated out. If you get those ketone sticks, those pH sticks, that's what you generally use to see if you're in true ketosis, if you're on a ketogenic diet. You need a little bit of carbs though to get Krebs cycle to run. So if you have just a little bit of carbs, all those ketone bodies you can utilize pretty effectively. If you bottom out carbohydrate consumption completely, Krebs cycle halts. All those ketone bodies start to spill over all over the place. And that's when you're going to have very pungent breath noticeable on those individuals. If you're somebody who's a type 1 diabetic, ketoacidosis is sugar imbalance, right, with diabetes. You're not making enough hormones to get sugar to get into the cells. So you're going to be, your body's going to shift to utilizing your fat stores a heck of a lot more. That's why those individuals are generally very, very, very thin because they don't have a lot of fat stores because they're having to utilize that. And, making sure they have proper carbohydrate sugar levels within the blood there ensures that, they're able to utilize that and they don't have an overaccumulation of ketone bodies, which can cause kidney damage in those individuals. So that's ketoacidosis, changes the pH of the entire system. But that's what those are. We'll talk about this a little bit when we look at metabolism. So there's your phospholipids. Again, another function of fat is this kind of phospholipid layer right here. The hydrophilic heads are all orientated towards the water. This is water. Okay. And the hydrophobic tails are all orientated away from the water. This orientation right here are how fat-soluble structures are carried in the blood. Okay. This structure right here is called a micelle. All right. And this is how we carry the fats that we break down from our diet in our fluids. It's how we get it into the intestinal cell. Okay. We can incorporate this into that phospholipid bilayer that makes up the cell membrane. Okay. And that's all we're trying to kind of get across here. Phospholipids. Hydrophobic fatty acids. There's micelles. Transport. Highlighting some important stuff again. Surfactant, this is basically what that surfactant is helping to do. It helps prevent surfaces from collapsing on one another, helps to transport. It's a transport medium. We'll see micelles when we talk about the digestive system. Another great thing about lipids is they make rings, because so far we've looked at just chains of hydrocarbons. Lipids can make steroids, cholesterol. Cholesterol is fantastic. Cholesterol is actually really good for you. A lot of cholesterol is bad, but cholesterol is really good. Cholesterol helps to make hormones, estrogens, testosterones. Those are really fantastic things, especially for women. I mean, if you don't make enough estrogens, you don't menstruate. You don't ovulate properly. You're going to have bone health issues. It makes cortisol. A little bit of cortisol is a good thing. A lot of cortisol is not such a good thing. Makes vitamin D. Okay. All these things we get and derive from cholesterol, from steroids, from lipids. Okay. It's very different just because of its ring structure. Okay. It's a ring structure. And you can see there, that's what I was talking about there. It makes a whole bunch of fantastic things. That's why cholesterol is such important. It gives membranes their fluidability. But again, a lot of cholesterol is a bad thing. Okay, there's good cholesterol, there's bad cholesterol. And the last major thing, and why is this important here? It's a fatty acid. This is a major communicator within the body. We are going to see prostaglandins predominantly involved with inflammatory response and a little bit with blood clotting. That's where we will see them. Depending upon the type of fat that you are consuming in your diet, if it's omega-6 or omega-3 fatty acids, get you different functionalities of these prostaglandins. Okay. If you consume more omega-6 fatty acids, that gets you more arachidonic acid, and that gets you more of the pro-inflammatory prostaglandins produced. It just what does that mean? It just means causes you to be in an inflammatory state, which can exacerbate the immune response and make it much more difficult for you to have a proper immune response when you have an infection. And they'll look at some of that when it comes to, you know, how the body responds to COVID and whatnot. Certain types of individuals with healthier profiles don't have a lot of those pro-inflammatory chemicals within them. And they have a little bit more success at overcoming some of that COVID infection compared to those that are in a more pro-inflammatory state.